Welcome back. It's time to look at the weekend newspapers, and to help me do that, I'm joined by ENCA's political editor, Vuyo Mvoko, as well as economist Duma Qubule. Gentlemen, good morning. Thank you so very much. Mr. Mvoko, political editor of ENCA, let me start off with you. Is Gwede Mantashe telling us that he is the second coming? I am the way and the truth. In response to the Nexa board, or what remained of it, chucking in the towel.
Look, there's that character, Gwede Mantashe, who has gotten away with a lot over the years. I think we journalists have allowed him, I mean, certainly in the time he was the Secretary General of the ANC, to get away with murder at times because of the character. Yes. I mean, he is, I remember last
he's gregarious.
Last weekend in Kimberley, so he looks for me and then finds me and says, yeah, what are those things you're saying about me being a tiger? And then he says, you should distinguish between a tiger and a pussycat. Now, only Gwede Mantashe can say something like that. But that said, there are serious issues here, I mean, at Nexa, at Eskom, and everywhere else. So someone like him, who's also the chairperson of the ANC, should really be circumspect, should think deeply and widely about the sort of message that he communicates.
Duma, I see you nodding your head in agreement.
You know what, this just confirms the chaos that is in the state-owned enterprises. Like, you have Nexa, the board resigned earlier this week, and you're seeing Transnet as well. There's chaos at Transnet in terms of the appointment of the new CEO. Apparently, the interviews were done 6 months ago, and there's like a fight between, I think, the government and the board as to who to appoint as the CEO. And then I was also hearing this week that the appointment of director, it wasn't the board's choice, and a director was imposed on the board. Do you see what I'm saying? And we're also seeing what happened at PRASA, where the minister didn't get his person in terms of being CEO, so he just disbands the whole board. The board didn't agree with his choice of CEO, so he makes the choice of the CEO the administrator of the company. So it's absolutely bizarre. And this is the start of a new year. It couldn't have started on a worse note. We started with the Eskom load shedding, then the crisis around some people want to put Eskom with the tiger in charge. And then also, it's just bizarre. And then we had downgrades on our growth forecast to 0.9%. So we're going to have the 5th consecutive year of declining GDP per capita. And we had the job losses at Massmart, in the retail sector. It is absolutely chaos. And I think that people can't now... We need a plan to get our economy out of this crisis.
Talking about a plan, Vuyo, the African National Congress, Lekgotla, starts today, but the NEC meeting already started on Friday. Yesterday, I understand 3 inputs were made on state-owned companies. One was by Enoch Godongwana, who's the head of the Education, or rather the Economic Transformation Committee, Niva Makgetla, an economist who's been co-opted onto the NEC, and by the Public Enterprises Minister, Pravin Gordhan. And Ready to Govern seems to be the policy document again, Duma, that is framing the conversation. Your sense from the discussions yesterday, my understanding is very little appetite to move Eskom to energy, and Niva apparently making a very compelling numbers argument about the interventions that government needs to have the balls to make.
In fact, my understanding is that the reason is, I mean, Gwede Mantashe is, if you may call it that, an ally of Pravin Gordhan. So he has had to choose his battles, right? Because the focus should be on what needs to be done, not so much on where this thing belongs. I mean, I remember in the last couple of interviews I did with him last year, he said it unequivocally that he thinks it belongs to him. It's an anomaly that it is with public enterprises, even though back in the day when this decision was made, it seemed to make sense. So I think it's chosen not to fight or to be seen or to focus on a fight that is not going to take anybody anywhere, which is over where Eskom should belong, but rather to focus on what needs to be done. Hence, Niva Makgetla's compelling research that he put before the NSA becomes more important and becomes the focal point, and less what would actually play in the hands of those who want to hound out out Pravin Gordhan, which I think is actually a very, very good move, because those who are now in agreement with Gwede Mantashe in the NEC about moving this thing out aren't necessarily his allies and are not well-meaning in every sense.
Okay, let's take the political loadedness of where these things should be to the practicalities, Duma, of what the economy requires,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
So we see, for example, that Portia, her surname is now Derby. When I knew her, she was Portia Mulifi, and she is apparently the top front runner for the post at Transnet. And of course, what many people don't realize is that she doesn't have the politics of her former husband. In fact, to the contrary. Is she a good candidate for Transnet?
Well, in the other paper, Karima, they said that the board had selected 2 candidates.
Yes.
It was Patrick Lamini from the DBSA, and the runner-up was Simi, was the guy from the water board. I just forget his name, yeah. And then I forget his name. And then she was, I think, the minister's choice. So there is a battle that's been going on for 6 months about this. It's just bizarre. Someone has to make decisions. If you look, I went into the Transnet website. The top 12, about 10 of them are acting. It is absolutely bizarre. And if you look at Eskom, there's about the power stations, the majority of the managers of the power stations are acting. It is just bizarre. And we've had 2 years of this administration, and we are not seeing any improvement whatsoever.
Now, here's the interesting thing for both of you, and I've argued this. We've seen all of these boards and SOEs, they chew out CEOs. The CEOs come and go, the boards come and go. But the average lifespan of an engineer at Eskom is 25 years. The front page of the City Press has a story that talks to corruption at that level of management in the corporation, where an engineer that was situated strategically well could enable his family to contract, the power utility to higher services. So the corruption has actually, been not just internalized from the top and from the boards and where you've had the changes, but it's actually employees. I mean, there's over 1,000 people that are on DC at Eskom.
In fact, that's exactly the whole point of the state capture inquiry. In other words, there's been a great deal of focus about a minister's order to somebody that employ or give this particular person or entity a contract. And the importance of that commission, of that inquiry, is that it is able to get the people who know what actually happened, who are integrally involved in the day-to-day running and decision-making of these entities. And that's why in fact, that was one of the compelling arguments that were made for the extension of the Zondo Commission's lifespan. It was to allow it to really get to that layer. And it's very important because, remember, to get where we are today, for us to know the things we know about state capture, it was those people who actually came forward. Some of them risked their professional lives, their futures, I mean, basically, and came forward with information that was so critical in both the understanding but also the exposing of the ills that went on inside those SOEs. And this is just one of those classical examples of
it
how
undergirds everything that you say. Duma, I want to shift gear, not completely, but I mean it's in line with this. We saw the Reserve Bank not doing what it traditionally does, as in go for austerity. You've always been an advocate for them using more tools in the toolkit than just inflation targeting. Are you happy with this move? Did they go far enough?
Okay, so I'm writing my column for this week, and first column of the year, and they ran out of excuses not to cut rates. So I did. So they cut by 0.25 basis points. So I did some research on the top 20 emerging market central banks, and most of them have been cutting rates since July last year, the second half. Like India, it's 5 cuts. Most of the countries at 4 cuts. And we have an insane situation where the prime lending rate,
Yes.
once you take out inflation, is at about 6%, and our country is in a crisis. So I argue that there is lots of space for further interest rate cuts, and we need more aggressive interest rates cuts, because that is the only hope for our economy right now while this is playing out. The thing about interest rate cuts, they don't require state capacity to start working in the economy.
It's immediate.
It's immediate.
I mean, if you look at Portugal, for example, I mean, that's what they did. They faced a severe, depression in terms of the economy. Yes. And what they did was they put disposable income in the hands of people. In the hands of the people, so that people can actually buy things. I got an SMS, by the way, from my bank saying that my bond repayment is going to be lowered. So the idea that this isn't important and will have very little effect on people, like some economists would have said, seems not to be the complete story, Vuyo.
No, I know the governor, zealously guards his independence. But
as he should.
Yes, he should.
But he's got an array of things to do and that he can do.
Yeah, but I think all of this lies in everyone talking. I mean, at that briefing earlier this week, where the cabinet ministers were going to Davos, we're talking about the messaging that they are going, the message that they are taking to the world at the World Economic Forum. I think it has never been more important for all the key role players to really be able, not necessarily, trample on the toes of each other, but to say, this is where we are as a country, and the conversations that Duma is talking about should also be happening at that level. I mean, the governor is going to be there. No, I mean, he's always there. These finance, economic development ministers are indeed going to be there. One of them was telling me about the incredible amount of work that is going on behind the scenes. Of course, I did point out that it's difficult to believe that because we have nothing tangible that we can, point to. But, I mean, those places that are free of all this other stuff, that we should by no means sort of dismiss or push to the side. Those conversations should indeed be taking place where they find one another and have these conversations for the good of this economy and everybody else.
The team that's going to Davos, firstly, what is it that they need to be saying? And most importantly, what more should the governor do that is in his toolkit, in his remit, to be able to stimulate growth, to be able to get cash in the hands of people?
So here we have a situation where the government is going to Davos. I must say, Karima, this is a damn squid. It's not. The president is not leading it. And you might have seen last year there was a video that went viral where the president is asking, where is my finance minister? The finance minister wasn't there at some of the meetings in Davos. So this is the person now who's leading the discussions at Davos. And I think many people, let's be honest, are going to be disappointed that the president is not there. Now, back to the situation, the message. Now, you can't be asking foreigners to invest in your country when you, as the government, are not investing in the country. You can't be going to investment summits asking the private sector when there is a public sector investment strike. Between 2015 and 2018, government investment in the economy has collapsed by 1/5. And so everything there is not, it makes no difference if the government is. So we have to sort out these state-owned enterprises. We have to repair their balance sheets. We have to restructure their balance sheets. We have to solve their operational issues. There is so much that we have to do to get this country going. And I'm so sick and tired of ANC factions and factional debates. We just have to stop these factional debates.
Strip them
from
the actual issues that need to
I refuse to participate in any factional debate. It is absurd.
Yes.
I want to say, because I think it was in reference in part to the things that Duma was raising that I asked him. I said to him when we had an interview last week, look, people feel...
Is this Mr. Montage?
No, this is the president.
Oh, the president.
You have missed a lot of opportunities. You aren't doing the things that people expected you to have done by now in the time that you had. And that's when he said he's not a lazy president and he's doing everything in his power. Of course, the jury is out.
Guys, we've got 45 seconds left. I cannot not take you to the front page of the Sunday Times, which of course talks about the horrific death of the young boy that drowned at Parktown Boys. For me, it's a symptom of the fact that when alive, black bodies are actually rendered invisible. That is why this boy wasn't noticed to have even been missing until the next day.
For the whole day.
What do you make of this?
You know, like, it resonated with the country, with the public at large, because we have children who go on these camps, and we dread to think that our child might not come back. It is absolutely horrific what happened at Parktown Boys. And that school, there's something going wrong in that school that goes beyond this, because every year there's some kind of scandal that's happening at Parktown Boys. And I've heard in the past from where my kids are, that the kids who come from there's a lot of traumatization of the boys who go to that school. Yeah.
And it gets down to the basics. You couldn't afford a life jacket. What were you doing in the water? Why take children to the water?
Yes.
You know, cutting corners for what?
Exactly.
You know? Because what? Black lives don't matter?
Yeah. Well, these are the things, of course, that the country is going to have to deal with. It's going to be interesting to see who's going to be held accountable for what happened at Parktown Boys, and whether, in fact, the camp and the teachers and the school itself is going to, accept the responsibility. So far, the statements coming from the school really leaves me cold. It doesn't give me any hope. Gentlemen, thank you so very much for your time. Well, you've had your fix for the week. See you next Sunday. Thank you for watching.